So the third
Okay.
term starts on December 30th, and yeah, and second years will finish their fifth term by 23rd January. So maybe after that, or maybe after Pongal.
Hmm.
No, we can wait as long as the government does not say open. That's it. No other choice. You have to open and then manage
I agree. I agree. With the
till such time because
um,
circumstances. Sorry, yeah.
with the Pondicherry government putting pressure and probably asking people to or institutes to open up from the January 1st or second week. So looks like probably things may start to probably we may the Tamil Nadu government also may want to consider that also. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
the
See,
good
IIT
part
they
is
had a
that we'll be
problem.
quite cautious,
Anna University they had a
right?
problem. Yeah, yeah. It has to
Right.
be very cautious approach.
Hi Biswa, hi Ravi, hi Rahul. Would you guys want to share a few words?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Bishwa here. Yeah, thanks for this initiative that you have taken. Uh, Probably this will be my first meeting after I graduated from BITS. So quite new to that, but trying to catch up with the emails and the communication that was shared in the email and the groups. So it's a fabulous activity like BITSA has been doing. And I would, after joining this also, I will take a call how I can contribute to this activity and participate actively. So that's it
Very nice, very
from
nice.
my side until I. Sorry.
Biswa, what do you do? Which batch do you belong to? And tell us a little bit about, yourself also.
Yeah. Basically, I did the MTech from BITS Pilani through the work integrated program. So I graduated 2 years back. I am right now working in TCS as a specifically in TCS, we have some horizontal units where we focus on specific technologies. So I am working right now in the digital platform COE. So I am leading the blockchain infra offering. So that's my professional background, and graduated in the like MTech in software engineering specialization with data analytics. So that is in brief about the BITS and TCS. So I have over almost 20 years of IT experience. So I started my career with Java J2E, then worked with big clients like I had the opportunity to work with World Bank. So I have directly worked with them at the customer location as well. So working on their great initiatives to the world. So that is in, and I stay in Mumbai. By chance, like Mumbai, it's in Dombivli, the Pallava from in the Dombivli East. So I have means my wife and two kids with me.
Very, very nice, very nice. Biswa, welcome again to our forum, and good to see that this happens to be the first event, and I'm sure you'll be more and more active and participate with us in more and more programs and initiatives which happen across the world.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Hi, Ajay. Good to see you here.
Hi,
Which batch and where are you joining us from, Ajay?
I'm not from IIT or IIM. I'm joining from Delhi.
Great, great. And what do you do?
I have my own entrepreneur venture in the telecom space.
Great, Ajay. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, BBC. Welcome you and to both new joinees for me. Now, it was the English Puritans who cancelled Christmas. Why Johnson thinks they're Puritans?
Hi, Aarti. Welcome. And hi, Suresh. And hi, Ravi.
Use the Argo
Hi, Srinivas.
Hi.
Good evening, Vignesh.
Hello, hello. We are almost there, probably in a minute. Once Professor is there, we will get started. So until Professor Tillai joins up, we can use this as a good networking platform to open up, share a few words, and some more thoughts on how you've been related with BITS and BITSAA activities, and you could also share some views. Good, I can see Professor Tillai joining here.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. We'll do a quick check and
Yeah, okay.
so give me a minute. I will start to offer you the moderator access as well, and we'll get started. So good to see you, sir. Thanks again for joining us.
So I just want to check,
Sir, would you want
is my audio clear?
Yes, sir, your audio is clear. Probably someone else can also confirm. Murugvel and Satya sir can also confirm.
It's clear.
Okay, so there was some feedback, but yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, we can go.
Great, sir. Great. So thanks a lot, Professor Tillai, again for joining us. And for the entire audience here, thanks a lot for joining us in our fourth edition of the Next Big Thing, brought to you by BITSAA Chennai. So we've been hosting a lot of virtual events during the last 7-8 months. We've done some very varied, light-hearted events. And in recent times, we felt the need and necessity to bring in some very interesting initiatives or startup ventures, which have been started by our own BITSian fraternity. And we have been doing a whole lot of identifying and inviting them on a very periodic basis. So we try to invite at least one event per month, and on the basis of the availability and scheduling, and in fact, this happens to be the second event in this particular month. I can also see, I'm sorry, can I do a mic check? Is my voice a little audible? I saw someone say that my voice is too feeble. Is it better now?
It's all good.
It's Vignesh, you can be a bit louder.
Great, thank you. So I would like to welcome. Yeah, sure. So I would like to welcome you all once again for our fourth edition of the BITSAA Chennai's Next Big Thing. And we have Professor Tillai here joining us in this particular session and having us explain a bit more on his own venture, which is YNOS. But before I hand over the stage to Professor Tillai, I would like to invite Murugvel to share a few words about Professor Tillai here. Murugvel, I pass the stage to you so you could share a few words about Tillai, sir.
Thanks, Vignesh. Welcome all juntas for our next big things series, and we are a very great eminent speaker today. It's none other than our 89 batch Tillai Rajan, professor and doctor. So, so I'm very young to introduce him, but anyway, I take this privilege to invite him for this lecture. Tillai Rajan is a professor in the Department of Management Studies Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. He is an associate at Mosawar Rahmani Center for Business and the Government, Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard University. His research interests encompass startups, ventures, and SMEs. During 2019 to 18, he edited the annual India Venture Capital and Private Equity Report. In 2020, he played a key role in the formation of innovation and venturing, and especially the entrepreneurship in India network, a multi-international consortium to research on the innovation and venturing in India. He is also a co-founder of YNOS Venture Engine, a startup set up to address the pain points of early stage entrepreneurs. Today, he is with us to share stop spraying and researching. A very awesome topic he has selected for us, enlightening all the entrepreneurs here. Thank you. Once again, I welcome Dr. Professor Rajan sir for his uh, insights for our budding entrepreneurs. Looking forward, sir.
Oh, thank you, Murugvel. So just one more voice check. Everything's fine from my end. Am I audible?
Sir, very much, sir.
Oh, thank you. So what I'll do is I will share my screen, and and then we will get on from there. Okay. So I'm just sharing the screen. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for confirming. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this BITSAA event, and it's a Sunday evening, and therefore, to be able to take the time out and be here, it's a great thing for me because all of us are quite busy these days, right? And Sunday is the only time that we want to kind of unwind a bit, and during that time to be able to do this and speak to fellow Bitsians. I mean, I'm seeing that there are not all Bitsians here. I can see some non-Bitsians for sure. And so Srini Kasturi is there, and so therefore we studied together at I am Bangalore, and so there are I'm sure there may be one or two more who might not be Bitsians, but doesn't matter. So what I'll do is I will keep it, fairly simple, and we can kind of have a dialogue kind of a thing. But to start with, let me kind of go on. Okay. So I seem to be having some problem with my usually reliable Wi-Fi today. I don't know why. Okay. So now we are on. So I mean, obviously, all of us are familiar with OSs, and I mean, cutting across generations, the most popular department in which OSs, I think we may all agree, it's informals, right? So I mean, the way I've kind of put it here is I don't want to make this session very formal one, so I am going to keep this fairly informal, and the way I'm going to talk, it's not going to be a very formal presentation. But I feel that the interactions can happen towards the end. I will take maybe about 20-25 minutes to go over whatever I wanted to say, and then after that we can have a discussion. First of all, apologies for being a little bit late. So I was just trying to fix up my Wi-Fi, right? And so a little bit of advice before we go on is, so this session would be more likable with whatever I've seen in the picture, right? So don't call me it's boring. Hi guys, if you want to really grab up a drink, while listening to this, then you may find the session a little bit more likable, right? Okay, let's get on with it. When I talk about finance, I mean, Murugavel actually has been giving a very elaborate introduction, but for others, let me also quickly wind up after finishing bits. Like most people, I went to an IIM, and I decided that I may actually enjoy doing research and being in academia. So I actually joined the fellow program at an IIM, and I worked for some time, and then after that, I kind of shifted to academia. So when I joined an IIM, I was not sure what my interests are. But then after joining an IIM, I found that I seem to have an aptitude for finance. Not that I did very well, but it's just that I found that in finance my scores were better as compared to the class averages. So then I decided that probably finance is something that I may want to pursue. So that's how I landed up in finance. My thesis was not actually in finance. So it was in it was actually public sector management in some sense. But when I joined academia, IIT Madras in 2006, and also in a little bit when I was working in the industry, I was choosing to work in finance. So finance, if you really look at it, it's a discipline that employs more nuclear and rocket scientists than physics itself, right? So what essentially we are trying to say here is, it's a subject that is becoming phenomenally quantitative in nature. Um, so people are when we are trying to use quantitative. What do we use quantitative is basically we are trying to model something that we have not been able to model otherwise. So basically there are two or three types. There is obviously qualitative modeling, and then there is quantitative modeling, right? And qualitative modeling can be used in those disciplines where there is still lot of difficulties are there in making things quantitative. For example, in human resources, in studies related to human relations and so on, but that's still difficult. There's a lot of difficult to quantify a lot of parameters. But on the other hand, in finance, there is the parameters are amenable for quantification, and therefore there has been a phenomenal amount of quantitative element that has actually crept in finance, particularly in the world of investments, right? So finance, actually there are again multiple sub disciplines within it, and I'm talking about mainly about investments. And in investments, we are really seeing a lot of quantitative. uh, so what we felt is, can we really use this quantitative element in an area that I'm familiar with? Right? So that's our first premise. So now let us move on. So there is, again, we are talking about serendipity versus science. So what does serendipity do? Serendipity essentially means that whatever we do, it comes in a fairly an unplanned fashion, right? uh, I mean, in the sense that we don't specifically keep looking for it. There's a chance occurrence. That is basically serendipity. And science is basically, making it very, very predictable. Right? What we are saying is there is an input, and then there is something happens to it, and then there is an output. Right? So science tries to understand, make things predictable. But in our day-to-day life, as we all might believe, there are certain joys of looking at serendipity. Um, I mean, obviously, we are all very familiar with what as Pasteur has said. Serendipity does not come just like that. Right? So serendipity favors the prepared mind. So essentially, what people have said in the past is, serendipity follows science. But if you kind of look at it in a very, very um, mm, big picture perspective, there is something that is chance occurrence, and there is something that is very systematic, which I'm calling it as science. Despite the fact that there are several joys on discovering things by serendipity, today we want to make things a lot more predictable. So therefore we are trying to use science, right? We are trying to use science in every other field to ensure that we understand the parameters, we understand the causal factors, and then in the process we may actually lose out on what is called as the joys of serendipity. But nevertheless, I think for the sake of uh, you know achieving better things much quicker, we are now trying to pursue the path of science. So one of the curse of the modern world is what I would call as predictability. And so today we are so used to predictability, that I think is creating a lot of value for sure. For example, one of the biggest rewards in the stock market is to predictable, right? Stock markets rewards those companies that are more predictable as compared to companies that are not. Even companies that have an average higher earnings per share, if their volatility is higher, then the stock markets do not like that volatility. So everywhere, people who are wanting predictability, people are willing to pay a premium for predictability. Today, for example, if you look at hailing a cab on the app, so we kind of get how long is it going to take for the cab to reach our location, right? So that's starting with a predictability, and then the cab also mentions how much it is going to cost. So before we even get on a cab, we know how much we are going to pay. We know how much time it is going to take. And then we also know who is going to be the driver. We know who is going to, what is the contact number, everything, right? So just kind of go back 10 years back, when none of these taxi hailing services were there. We did not have any clue in terms of where you go to a taxi stand, you pick up a taxi, you don't know how much he's going to ask. We never know how much time it's going to take. There was so much of uncertainty, but with this world of digitization, that's kind of addressed at one go. So everywhere, we are always looking for predictability, and people are willing to pay for that predictability. I mean, there are still things that we would want to be unpredictable. Like for example, at a very very personal level, right? I mean, if you are really looking at our professional lives, I think we would always want predictability. But at a very individual level, if you're looking at a very personal experience, we always kind of value unpredictability, right? So there is always the world for surprises, provided the surprises are positive. I mean, that's what I meant. I mean, we always like to have surprises. When we find something good that we did not expect, we feel happy about it. Right? So whenever somebody wishes on a birthday, and nobody knows till the end that the person is going to wish, when it's a surprise, we all like it. So when there is still value for unpredictability, but business is all about predictability, right? But I know unpredictability makes a good business model, right? As we all see, right? So gambling is a roaring business. We all know, right? So gambling is all about unpredictability, but people just go, right? People just go and enjoy the world of gambling. I mean, I'm sure today the governments are saying that this kind of gambling is ruining families. People are losing lives, and many of the state governments are looking at banning these kinds of games that are on the verge of gambling. So why do people go for all this gambling? Because there is inherent um, you know um, aptitude, right? There is this thing for unpredictability. People would want to, I mean, it's not the question of everybody knows that they were going to lose money in the long run in many of these gambling, right? But still they just go for it because the unpredictability of winning is what makes people excited about it. There is a sense of adrenaline when people win, and many people pay for just that, right? They know they are not going to win it, but then they are going to go to a casino, and then they play for a certain amount of money. Why? Because even for that little bit of time, as an individual, we all like to see how we can enjoy in an unpredictable environment. But of course, for people who are having these casinos and gambling games, this unpredictability makes a good business model. But this is not what I'm going to be talking about today, right? I'm going to talking about mostly about how, as a business, everybody wants to be predictable, and how we are also trying to, in our business of YNOS, how we are also trying to join that bandwagon of predictability. So the focus of YNOS essentially, sorry, was there a question?
Clear the dog clearly.
All right, okay. So let me continue. We looked at our focus at my startup YNOS Venture Engine. It's going to be startups. Or more important, we really looked at private finance. So I was just mentioning, when I have been teaching finance, and if you really look at finance, capital markets, where people go about and raise capital is a very, very important area of interest for most people. And so I'm not really a stock market person. I'm not really a person who looks at public markets, public capital markets. But I've been fascinated by private finance. So, given my earlier stint in a venture capital company, where I had the opportunity to evaluate and assess several startups, in terms of getting investment, for me, when I decided that I have to really look at an option for pursuing entrepreneurship, I said, can we really look at startups? So that's basically was my initiation, because I had a research background in this. I have been working quite a bit in this, and then said that can we really look at the area of startups and private finance? So when we really looked at it, startups, obviously today we call anything a startup. Ola, is still a startup. People still refer to Uber as a startup. Essentially, it's a name. Once it's given, it sticks for a long time, particularly if a company is successful. But in our sense, we looked at startups means companies that are in the first 5 years of their life. Right? So that is what we wanted to we want to put a boundary on. Right? And when we did that, we said that let us focus on startups at the bottom of the pyramid. So where we are really looking at companies in the first 5 years of existence. And so that's where we have a large number of companies. Why do we really, what is our, why did we really look at the market where we are talking about volumes? Okay? So that I will probably be explaining it in a little while. But that's our focus. The focus is to really look at startups, where there are a large number of startups in the initial stages. And today, one of the important imperatives for startups is to raise capital. Many of the startups obviously are looking at something, doing something innovative, and that means they have to incur development, right? And to produce something before you actually get any cash flow from the business, one needs capital. And a big thing that has actually happened in the Indian business, in the business landscape, is that most people who are starting up today, they are not from very wealthy family business backgrounds. Most of them are from normal middle class backgrounds, and their parents have been, salaried employees. So they don't really have the family support, right? The family can only provide the initial amount, so they have to depend upon capital from external sources, right? So when you look at external sources, traditionally you look at banks, and banks can probably give an educational loan, but when we actually go and say that I need some money to do a startup, they simply cannot understand, right? So banks obviously is not the source for raising startup capital. And obviously then you go and knocking up to a government, and the government will probably give a couple of lakhs, and you might have to spend several months in getting that couple of lakhs. And for entrepreneurs, where time is a very, very important factor, one cannot wait for so long, right? So obviously one needs to look at raising capital from private investors. And so this is a segment that we wanted to target, right? So that private investors is what is going to make invest in startups. And obviously if you're really looking at the contours, how things are developing, startups are going to stay in the country for a long time, right? It's not that this is a fad and it is going to disappear one fine day. For a variety of reasons, the culture of startups is going to stay for a long time, and therefore we need to really look at ways of uh, you know um, uh, making it simpler. Fundraising should be simpler for entrepreneurs. So if you look at it, if you look at that as our objective, right? Our objective has been that can we really look at fundraising simpler for startups, because that is the biggest bugbear for most startup entrepreneurs. And they need to raise capital, and today, the number of startups that raise capital is only about 7%, right? It's only about 7% of our startups are able to raise capital. On the other hand, if you really look at companies, startups in the US, they have been having this startup culture for a long time, and there the proportion of startups that are able to get some amount of funding, it's close to about 35 to 40%, right? So we are really looking at sevenfold increase, right? I mean, you're talking about 35 40% on a much larger base, right? In India, we are talking about close to 10,000 startups that are, let's say that are founded every year. In the US, we are talking about close to 100,000 startups getting founded every year, and then so 30 to 40% of that is getting funded, and India 7% of a much lower base is getting funded. So if we have to really sustain this culture of startups in the country, then there will have to be some mechanism where they get funded, right? That process has to become easier. So that we felt was where we could first tackle with, right? So if you are able to improve the ratio from 7% to even, let's say, about 15%, the impact that it is going to have is going to be really phenomenal, right? So we said there, let's kind of look at that process of enabling startups to raise funds much quicker. And we looked at it as the fundraising process is twofold. One is the investor identification, and the second is the investment closure, right? Let's assume that these are the two broad steps that are involved. Um, in the initial stage, when I'm saying the initial stage, the first investment that a company is that the startup is going to get, right, which is essentially is an angel investor, right? In the angel investment round, when we are trying to get investment for the first time, the investor identification process takes a long time as compared to the investment closure process, right? Because normally in investment closure process, what involves is a due diligence, right? The investor looks at evaluating the opportunity much more closely. They look at information, they do some analysis, and so on and so forth, right? So there is a due diligence process which takes a long time, right? That's investment closure, right? So in the early stage, the investment closure does not take much time, right? Because as you all know, there's nothing much to do due diligence about, because the company is in the initial stages. There is not much information. As what you see is what you get, right? So that is a kind of a stage. So the investor identification process takes a longer time. For an entrepreneur, finding out who might be the appropriate investor takes more time. But once the appropriate investor is identified, the investment closure does not take much time. On the other hand, if you look at a slightly larger startups, let's say, for example, the company is going to a private equity investor. For a private equity investor, identifying the investor is not going to take much time, because one is there are not too many private equity players as we kind of become bigger, and what is going to take more time is the investment closure, right? Whereas it's the opposite that holds true for early stage companies. The investor identification is going to take a longer time because there are too many investors, right? There are about, let's say, if you assume that there are 5,000 angel investors in the country today, I mean, in a very, very conservative estimate. So a startup entrepreneur, first we'll have to find out which of these 5,000, which there are 5,000 doors to knock, which of these 5,000 doors should she knock, right? So that is, imagine knocking. The probability of finding the right investor in this 5,000 is 1 by 5,000. I mean, or let's assume that finding out the 10 investors in that 5,000 is 10 by 5,000, which still is a very, very low probability. So investor identification process, if it can somehow be improved better, then it is going to be a significant way of reducing the frustration for the entrepreneur, right? If the ratio of 1 by 500, if we can improve it to, let's say, for example, 1 by 50 or even by 1 by 25, right? So that we believe is going to have a significant impact on improving the probabilities that I talked about earlier, right? So that's essentially the problem that we are focusing in YNOS, right? To be able to address this problem of investor identification and reducing the frustration of the entrepreneur, right? So what did we do there? So essentially we said that can we predict potential investors, right? Can we predict potential investors? So most of the entrepreneurs, if the people who have been able to get angel investors, we speak to them and then they'll say, okay, they did all the good work, but then at the end of it, they will also say, we have been lucky, right? We're lucky that we are able to find the investor, and then we're lucky that we got funded and all that. So can we be prepared for luck, right? So can we enable entrepreneurs to be prepared for luck? So that is a question that we wanted to address ourselves. In a sense, can we really predict who could be a potential investor? We kind of looked at it not as a problem of trial and error, but we looked at it as a problem of science. Can we really use some kind of can we really use some rules and look at some parameters, and using these parameters, can we really try and see if we can predict who could be the potential investors? So remember, it is not really a very easy process, right? Because we need to really consider so many factors. So that's what we are trying to do, and essentially what we are trying to do is that the science of investor prediction. So when I looked at the topic, what should be the topic? We essentially are trying to see if we can bring in a little bit of investor prediction. That is, can we really decode the black box by which investment happens? So ultimately, when an investor sees a potential proposal from an entrepreneur, there are several things that go on in his mind, right? Obviously there are certain biases. An investor could possibly be biased by his prior work experience. He could be possibly biased by his previous investment experience. He could possibly be biased by his own personal backgrounds. So an investor is not somebody that has a clean open mind, right? Most of the investors would come in with a certain amount of biases when they come to the table to discuss with the entrepreneur. And most times, the entrepreneur is not aware of these potential biases that could exist in the minds of the investor, right? Why? In many cases, the entrepreneur is not fully aware about the investor, their background, or even if he's aware, it is going to be very difficult, to just look at many of the factors that affect investment and start processing it, right? So the processing power of the mind is limited because we don't know which of those biases are important and which of these biases need not really play a major role. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it that we wanted to really look at is so there are some factors that investors have assigned importance to as compared to certain factors, right? So we kind of looked at research, and we looked at other research done by others vis-a-vis the research that we have done ourselves. And so we are able to then identify the factors that investor assigns priority, right? They may not say that they assign priority, but we kind of model that. And we kind of model that using their investment pattern, right? Most of the time what happens is, we look for credible signals, right? In the world of finance, it's not just, we're looking at, it's important to find out which signals are credible and which signals are not, right? I mean, as we all know, as engineers, the biggest challenge is how do you separate signal from noise? It's the same problem here as well. How do we really say which one of these is important and which one of them is not? So that's where we relied on research. And when we relied on research, we relied on essentially the investment track record of the investors, because ultimately when the investor is making an investment in a certain startup, that is a most credible signal about his investment preference that he signals, right? He may actually go and shout from the top of his roof that he's planning to invest in XYZ startup and so on and so forth, but unless until he goes ahead and makes an investment, the signal is not credible, right? So what we also then looked at is, in our process of making this investor prediction, we look for credible signals, right? Which essentially means that we have to look at the investment that he has made in the past. And using these factors, that means their investment biases that bring in, or we've been able to identify certain amount of bring in a certain amount of prediction, right? To which of those investors can be a potential, can be a potential investor to an entrepreneur. Right? So we are able to successfully reduce, right? We are able to successfully reduce the number of investors that a startup can start with. Right? So give him a list of 5,000. Obviously, the startups will find it very difficult as to to 25 and then say, okay, fine, you better start off from here, right? Let your starting point be from here, and then you move on from here. So that essentially is what we have been able to do. So now some of you might have this question: is it really predictable? Is it really predictable? Can we really look? No, obviously we are in version 1, right? We are in version 1 of whatever we have done, but at this stage, we have been able to or we've been able to predict at about 20 to 22%, right? Test results, but then that still is better than zero, right? So when people do not have any a prior way of predicting, then it's going to be so much more difficult as compared to 20%. Over time, I'm sure that we may be able to increase. It's still not possible. We may still not be able to make it 100%. But still, we think that we may be able to significantly improve more than 20%. Now, having said that, we also understand that there are certain limitations in what we are trying to do. So what we are trying to do is to tell the potential entrepreneur who might be the right investor, right? But we are in no way able to predict whether that startup will be a success, right? The startup may be a success or it may not be a success. But we are still saying that this might be the set of investors. That is one. Second is we assume a certain amount of quality, right? We assume a certain amount of quality in the business plan of the entrepreneur, right? We have not been able to assess the quality of the business plan or the quality of business that has been proposed. We assume that the startup would be in a position to bring up the quality bar as compared to any other startup that is there in the market that have been successfully funded. Right? So these are the two assumptions that we have made. But nevertheless, this is what we have tried to do. Right? We have tried to bring in a certain amount of predictability to identifying potential investors. So many times when I meet people, with the idea, with what we are doing, they're saying that it's still a very, very difficult game, right? Most successful entrepreneurs who have got venture funding, they have been able to get funding, and not initially they had to meet several investors, right? Some people have said that I have to actually meet 20, 25 investors before I can actually get funded. So my response to that is precisely the reason why we think our tool will be useful, right? Because with our tool, one doesn't really have to meet several investors. At least the objective our tool is to ensure that one doesn't need to meet so many investors. We could probably reduce the number of meetings that you might have to have, because each and every meeting is very energy sapping process. And at the end of it, if an investor comes back and says that he is not interested, that's a bloody blow on the entrepreneur, right? And consistently getting declines from the investors can really have a big effect on the confidence. And ultimately, entrepreneurship is all about how confident one is in terms of addressing the problem. Right? So I guess this is what we have tried to do, and I've come to the end of this talk. I just wanted to keep it a little light rather than get into technicalities, because obviously an evening on a Sunday is not the time where we get into technicalities. But I would kind of invite you to basically try our portal, and for those who have attended this talk, obviously I wanted to give a small return gift, 50% off on our subscription, which actually is already pretty low. But if you use our code startup now, you probably get a 50% off, and so that's about 250 rupees per month for 12 months. And so that's kind of subscription that we are having. We need to actually have more and more entrepreneurs try out our platform, and I'm hoping that some of you might try pass the word around to whoever might find this useful. So now I will stop, and probably the time to maybe make it more interactive and take a few questions.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think that was a very interesting perspective you brought in here, and it's also a very nice gesture that you offered us on uh, uh, the fee, which is going to be subsidized for the visitors or the participants here, and I'm sure they would definitely want to benefit from this. The floor is now open, and I mean, those of you who have any questions, probably you could unmute and talk, or you could put it down on the chat box as well.
Professor, thank you so much for a very engaging talk. And this was, I think, what you've tried to do here, it's very interesting in trying to bring some science into um, behavioral science, if you may, of the investor. What I wanted to check with you was this population of investors that you studied. Where do they come from? What is the profile of this population, if you don't mind?
So these investors, that we have used in our studies have been from India. So we have actually looked at it from two places, right? One is the secondary source, which actually we looked at studies that have been done in the US and essentially the West. And then we kind of also looked at doing studies in India based on looking at Indian investors. And yeah, so that's a sample. So I mean, our sample right now has about 2,300 or so. But then the studies that we have done in the past were not so large. We probably did it about 800, 900 investors who have invested in Indian startups.
Got it. Thank you. And this includes individuals and institutional investors.
No. Actually, this is only individuals. The reason why I said it's a science, because when you are looking at individuals, we don't know anything about it, right? No, the individuals do not clearly specify what is their investment preference, and they don't show anything. They don't show what is their past investments and so on. But if you look at institutions, they have a shop, right? The shop clearly mentions what is their investment rationale, which kind of companies they invest in, and how do they really shortlist. The investment process is clearly mentioned. They also have clearly advertised what their portfolio and all that. So it becomes much more easier, right? One needs to clearly say, okay, fine. Do I fit into that criteria or not? It becomes easy for the entrepreneur to make a decision. But as far as the individuals are concerned, there is nothing. They don't really do it. They don't really advertise which kind of companies they invest in and so on. So then it becomes very difficult to predict, right? They don't, I mean, there is no clear way of understanding. I mean, it depends on whatever they think. If they think it's investable, then they will invest, right? Because it is their personal capital. So that it becomes difficult to model. That's also exciting for us to work with.
Got it. Oh, that makes it even more interesting. One last question before I yield to the others. I apologize if I'm taking up the mic too much. What is the average size of investment that you're seeing across the startup population at the angel round?
So it's now even it's about $500,000. That's kind of the numbers that we are seeing very common now. So we are really looking at, let's say, 50 lakhs. What 5 years ago? But now we are looking at 2.5 crores, 500,000 to quarter, 3/4 of a million is being very common in the angel investment round.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sri.
Sir, Tele sir, I have a question for you, sir. So actually, how YNOS is different and unique compared to other ventures like this? For example, in 2015, we have been invited by PayPal to pitch in for their Start Tank program. Then we have moved to our pitch was so right. Then we had shown our product range, and after incorporating us in the startup tank, they says you are not more into the fintech. Okay, PayPal only think of only fintech products more. Then they removed us from the startup tank program. Then we approached the NASCOM 10K startup things. There they recognized us, and they had given us opportunity to include in the NASCOM 10K startups. So what I am saying is like this, so many NASCOM, IIT, lot of ventures are saying that we are helping the entrepreneurs, we are providing this one. So I want a very open questions for you. How YNOS is different from this one, and how it is unique, so that it will help for the more entrepreneurs to approach you instead of going merry-go-round. Once they come out of that one, they are completely in a merry-go-round. Say whether I have to go to NASCOM, whether I have to go to IITM Research Park, whether I have to go to like PayPal, some other top-notch companies who is extending this kind of opportunities. So it would be glad, sir, if you could share this info to all the entrepreneurs here.
So there are only two people here, right? So there is one an entrepreneur, and then there is an investor. And so between these two, there are several players, correct? So broadly, if you can call them as intermediaries, right? Or if you can call them as investment bankers. So we have, let's say, for example, the demand side and then the supply side, right? So supply side is the entrepreneur, right? They supply deals, right? They supply equity for investment. And then there is a demand side, which is from the investor side. So there are different platforms. There are, let's say, for example, you have platforms that are representing the interests of the investors. So today you have many of these platforms that represent the interest of the investors. Let's say you have Indian Angel Network, you have Mumbai Angels, you have Let's Venture. They all, in a sense, they invest in startups, but they're essentially looking at representing the interests of the investors. So it means what? They actually get compensated by the investors for the services that they provide. There used to be, intermediaries that are representing the entrepreneurs, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, right? But no longer, because this segment is turned to be extremely unprofitable for early stage, as far as early stage entrepreneurship is concerned. The deal size is very small and it's very risky, and therefore the investment bankers don't really see this as a very profitable opportunity. So there is nobody today who is representing the entrepreneurs. So that is where we fit in, right? YNOS comes in because there's a big gap as to not being able to represent the entrepreneurs, and so we feel that we are best positioned to pitch in that gap, right? In a sense, we take care of the interests of the entrepreneurs first. I'll give a very, very simple example, and how we kind of look at it from an entrepreneur first paradigm. So many of these platforms that look at representing the investors, what is their primary goal, right? The primary goal is to actually see as many startups as possible, right? And then select the best startup that apply to their program or they apply to them and so on, right? Even if you look at any of these advertisements for any of this, their primary goal is to ensure that they get as many applications as possible from the startups, right? They want to get more number of applications from the startups, and then they will choose the best. But what is the goal of YNOS? The goal of YNOS is to ensure that the entrepreneurs meet as few investors as possible before they can get their capital. Right? So which obviously is beneficial for the entrepreneur, right? An entrepreneur would like to save the time that takes for fundraising, right? He wants to quickly meet the relevant investors and tie up the funding rather than meeting a large number of investors. It does not help him. So you can see the conflict, right? You can see the conflict between an investor-led investment banker vis-a-vis an entrepreneur-first company like YNOS. So this is a landscape, right? I hope I've been able to kind of give you. So today you find most of these platforms that you talked about, they all represent the investors, right? They all represent the investors by and large. When you told about NASCOM, so NASCOM is not really an investment banker. NASCOM is the it's a facilitation channel, right? NASCOM is a facilitation channel. NASCOM is an industry body, right? So they don't promote anybody. Now, NASCOM does not do any fundraising for anybody. NASCOM does not do any fundraising for any particular startup. What they will do is they'll try and see if they can develop an ecosystem where more entrepreneurs come in and more investors come in, and automatically, like they have this sometimes a hidden hand, and things happen. But things does not happen automatically, right? There has to be some way in which needs to facilitate. And that's where the investment bankers play a role. And that's where platforms like YNOS play a very important role. So to give you, let's say, for example, if you look at India Angel Network, right? India Angel Network is by far one of the largest, right? And they fund about 2 or 3 startups every month, right? So that means they fund, let's say, about 30 to 35 startups in a year, right? And for 30 to 35,000 startups that they fund, they look at 25,000 applications, right? So you can just see the probability of getting funded, right, by these kinds of very large platforms. It's simply it's kind of not very friendly for the entrepreneur at all. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. It's very clear. So now we could understand the difference of NASCOM and other people, and how YNOS is doing. So excellent, sir. Excellent. I can put it word across to other entrepreneurs also who is in search of this one instead of going and heading into NASCOM and other people also. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
So
So
there's a
there is
question
a
in the
question
chat
from
box.
Ravi Kumar.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
So
on, Vignesh.
would you? Yeah, let me share it for the benefit of everyone. What are the sectors that are gaining most traction from investors in the last 12 months, and why?
Well, I mean, I have not really kept track of which are the sectors that are gaining traction, because my primary job has been to ensure that we develop the system in place so that the system is able to give the answer. I mean, and let's say, for example, if somebody is interested to know which are the sectors that are gaining most traction, I'll say, okay, that is answer should be available, in YNOS platform. So you should be able to get the answer from there. Uh, if you ask me what should be the answer, I say I would simply don't know because I have not been tracking that. Let's say, for example, unlike let's say, for example, information providers, there are several companies that provide information, like Venture Intelligence, for example. So they keep tracking. For example, you have like consulting companies like Pricewaterhouse, or you have Zinnov, And so these people, they track, right? They track how the sectors are moving and so on. But as YNOS, we don't track. But what we ensure that we develop the tools so that others are able to use that tool to be able to track. That is what I would respond. But let me hazard a guess, right? Let me hazard a guess because whether we like it or not, we have been in the industry. We are in the hub of startups. So as far as the startups are concerned, we all know what has actually happened from March. Even before that, 2019 was a high, right? As far as startups are concerned. Without COVID, also 2020 there would have been a potential dip, right? As far as startup funding is concerned. But the COVID simply accelerated the dip of startup funding. Um, so there are some sectors that obviously are finding favor, which are going to do well because of this COVID. So naturally, health tech is one, and then you have ed tech is another. So then you have mm, communication data, working from home, right? Working from home options. So that's so those kinds of business service. So these are the sectors that are obviously gaining a lot of traction because there are a lot of tailwinds for these kinds of businesses. So on the other hand, if you really look at consumer goods and services, right, it's been having a tremendous, so if you really look at in India, consumer goods and services has actually been a very, very important segment as far as startups are concerned. So that is one of the biggest hit. So then we have things like media, right? Media is another segment that has been biggest hit of all this. And obviously, the why, the question is, the biggest impact of this in why this because of simply the COVID thing, and people are now waiting to see what was once considered to be essential, as overnight it has become superfluous. People are not sure whether there'll be a demand for the service or not in the near future. So people are waiting until things stabilize. So there's a second question. What is your minimum criteria for including an investor in the system? Is there an accreditation or validation process? The minimum criteria for an investor in our YNOS is that he should have made at least one investment. Right? We don't want people saying that, oh, they would like to invest, but they are yet to make an investment, because in that case, we don't have any credible signal. Simply saying that they are interested to make an investment, we don't think that is a credible signal for us to be included in our platform. So the minimum criteria is to have made at least one investment. And is there an accreditation or a validation process? So normally we don't encourage self-certification, right? If an investor comes to our platform and then say, I'm an investor, this is an investment that we have made, we ensure that that information is triangulated from another source before we include that investor in our platform. Either it could be from any publicly available source or from any other credible source if that information is triangulated, which is what we do, and then we include it in our system. So therefore, we are very confident when we say that we have about more than 2,400 investors in our system to be able to predict. We are saying that all these people have a credible track record of making an investment. Um,
Thanks a
all
lot.
right. Okay.
Thanks a lot, sir. And that was quite helpful. If there is some time and possibility, do you think you can run us quickly through platform for the benefit of audience, sir, in a very quick manner for the benefit of people?
So essentially, that would actually is a fairly simple process, because most of the things they could actually do it themselves. So the reason um, I did not do it because I felt it might have been perceived as a boring sales talk. Obviously, we are in a community of BITSians, and I actually don't want to be seen as just very, very blatant selling of the various features of the platform. So that's why I did not do that. But I will probably talk about a most recent solution that we have put together. Let me see if I can open it up. Um, yeah, so Vignesh, I'm just going to share the screen.
Sure, sir, sure.
Okay, so this is our product screen. What I will just do is I will just take you through these startups. Um, so startups, is a recent solution where we have actually, put together a very, very intuitive, platform to scan the startup landscape, right? So I'll say start discovering. Um, so today, if you really look at the Indian, startup landscape, you know it's becoming very very difficult, right, to analyze and so on. So we feel that the first thing that we have to do is for somebody who wants to really get a hang on, it could be a startup, it could be an investor, or it could be anybody who wants to really get a hang on to the Indian startup market. Can we have to find out a simple way to make them analyze. So this is a platform that we have put it. I mean, at the back of it there is a lot of work that has actually gone in terms of developing this, but the front end is very very intuitive. So we have 69,598, about close to 70,000 startups that we have featured in this platform. And you can really look at in any other ways. For example, if I want to say that I want to really look at the startups that have been incubated or participated in any of the accelerators thing. So I click on that, and then if I if I if I press this, so in from our platform there are 1941 startups that have participated. So most of the time what happens is companies that have been incubated or participated in any of the accelerator cohorts, they are seen as more mature, right, or they are seen as validated, and it's a good deal pipeline for potential angel investors, right? So these quickly to be able to identify these startups that have been incubated is might be very very helpful for entrepreneurs, right, or for investors. Or we'll say, for example, I wanted to see how many of the startups are women founders, right? So if I can just click here, and then so there are 1,750, right, startups where with have women founders. So now obviously out of 70,000, only 1,750 have a woman founder. This obviously, say for example, there may be some investors who want to encourage startups that are founded by women, and if they want to really look at it, so this becomes a single place where they can really get the startups founded by women. And we have also done a very interesting way. For example, so right now I'll tell you, for example, we wanted to look at startups that have been founded by IIT IM alumni. Right? I am so sorry that BITS is not featured here, but I think we can just click on this I click refresh here. So 1,400 out of the 70,000 have been started by alumni of experience percentile, right? So I'll just say refresh. So then we have out of 70,000, 342 startups only fall with the experience score of 80 to 90 percentile. Now I'll say out of these, I want to really look at startups in the state of let's say I'll say Tamil Nadu, right? So I will just look at 16 startups in Tamil Nadu have promoters in the experience score of 80 to 90 percentile. Let's say, for example, an investor who wants to look at potential companies to invest, he can quickly search. Right? On the other hand, entrepreneurs who want to identify who can be potential competitors in their business, they can also quickly identify. Let's say, for example, I want to look at companies that are there in grocery delivery. So I just simply search for grocery delivery. So there are 8,900 startups that are in some way related to grocery delivery in India, right? I mean, that's a fairly big number, right? So obviously, if you want to shortlist further, I want to say how many of them are in Tamil Nadu, how many of them are in Tamil Nadu, right? So then you could refresh. So then there are 469 startups for grocery delivery in Tamil Nadu. And let's say, for example, I want to really look at, how many of them might be in Chennai, right? So Chennai is a tier 1 city. So in Tamil Nadu, tier 1 city, I'm putting this here, and then I find. So 309 startups related to grocery delivery in Chennai only, right? I mean, so obviously, this can be very valuable information for entrepreneurs, isn't it, to find out who are the others who are there, and to be able to do a competitive mapping, so on. So this is our newest offering, and I just thought I will share it here since you wanted me to share part of the YNOS.
I think that was quite brilliant, sir. I can see a whole lot of research which has gone into it, and the kind of filtering is very intuitive. And yeah, thanks for acknowledging and ensuring bits also will get featured in the list soon. Thanks for that. Let's see if there are any more questions from the audience here. So I saw Ravi had typed in a few more questions. Ravi, would you unmute and speak? This could probably be the last one or two questions before we call it wraps.
So he's added two more questions. Why now seen as introduction by you to the investor? Actually, I need some help in understanding this question.
Sir,
or is it simply referral?
Ravi, would you want to unmute and clarify your point? Or Tilly sir, probably you could go ahead as per your understanding.
Well, actually, I'm not very clear on this question, so I don't know how to respond. So maybe we can take it offline later.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry. But, the question really is that, I mean, when you are approaching as an entrepreneur to an investor, it's always better if it was through a referral or some kind of an introduction. And would the YNOS be seen as, because it is vetted and is actually screened somewhat, would that be seen as a referral or an introduction to a qualified investor?
So no, actually not really, because I'll tell you, um, in the early stage, as far as angel investors are concerned, they prefer to not have any intermediary. They would prefer to directly interact with the entrepreneur. So they don't want someone else representing the entrepreneur and coming to them, because that's not the way they would like it. I mean, bigger investors, yes, the initial legwork can be done by and the innocent bankers, but at the early stage, no, that's not the most desirable um, way. Because most of
Suppose,
the time it's done by a single meeting, and
yeah,
they prefer the entrepreneurs to directly be in touch with the investor rather than coming in through YNOS, or for that matter, any other platform.
I suppose, I mean, maybe if I rephrase that, I think, having listed, or the process of actually being listed as an entrepreneur, or the enterprise in YNOS, and I think, would that kind of help the screening process? Would that help streamline the screening process? Maybe help the entrepreneur themselves to think it through, so that there is a ready-made set of questions which are already answered. Would YNOS help that process, or the system itself?
So actually, no. What we do is we do not in a position to assess the business of the promoter, actually, because we at this stage we said that many of the entrepreneurs might feel a little hesitant to share their intricate business plans to us, and so we kind of leave it to the judgment of the entrepreneur to approach the investor. So we give a recommendation of 30 investors for an entrepreneur, and we give it to the judgment of the entrepreneur. For example, among this 30, it is possible that an entrepreneur might have already approached one or two of them, and he may not want to obviously approach them again. That is one potential case scenario, right? Uh, so, but what we do as a service is, um, we can probably work with the entrepreneur and help him to strengthen his business plan. So that is something that we do, right? We strengthen his business plan. We work with experts, do it. But then we encourage him to go to the investor directly. Um, so that's what we think gives a better chance of success.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Vignesh, you are in mute.
Okay.
I'm very sorry. Very sorry. No, I was
Sure.
just requesting everyone, if all of us could come on to the video mode, so that we could take a quick photo operation. Normally in a physical meeting, we could have had some coffee, tea, and network much more effectively, but probably we could use time to say hi and probably get to see our faces each other. Great. Srini, Nagarajan, Suresh, Rahul, Prem, Subramaniam, Shivshankar. Request to have you screen. Great. Almost there. Another few more people and have you. Rahul, Subramaniam, and Srinivas, Shivshankar. Moon, Aarti, you guys can also help me with the screen grab just in case, for all technical purposes. I can see Subbu sir. Oh,
Sure,
I never
Vignesh.
realized, it never occurred to me was around Subbu sir.
Yeah, I mean, I know Subbu actually. Hi, Subbu.
Hey, hi, Chile. Hi, Raja, Vignesh.
Hi.
Great,
Hi, everybody. I see so many of people like Nagarajan. Thanks for coming and taking your time off. Srini, of course, does not belong to this group, but thank you, Srini, for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No, pleasure. Yeah. I'm glad that you spared me some very incisive questions, but we'll take it offline. I don't want to be embarrassed in this group. Thank you. Yeah, I am done, Vignesh.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. We've had some very
Screen
good
grab is
conversation.
done.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Arti. I felt this was a very entertaining session and very informative as well. So starting from the word finance, which frightened many of us, and making it also more fun and bringing in the elements of flexibility, which is the need of the hour, and how the platform can help the startups as well as the entrepreneurs. I think that was a very rich level of information, and I also like the very fact you brought in this the demonstration or the demo of the product as well, and how it could also help in market insight and competitive benchmarking also. I think those are some very pieces which I could relate with, and how it could be a very effective tool both for entrepreneurs and investors alike. Thanks a lot, sir, and we wish you success, and we look forward to have the bits also built into the particular search tag which you mentioned about. And I would like to invite Aarti to share her final words first, sir, as a hello. Over to you.
Yeah, sorry if I'm not very audible. I've been sick. I told Vignesh not to bring me in. But yeah, it was quite uh, interesting presentation, considering the fact that finance was not my strongest forte. I was able to understand most of what the sir said. So thank you for making it simplified for me. Despite being a management student, finance was probably not my favorite part, though it is probably most essential for everyone to know. So I think this is a good tool because it helps people to cut down on the chasing time, or the drilling down time which you need to finalize on either startups going to the investor or the investors finding the right startup and bringing the match with each other. So I think that's a great tool which I think would be useful for them. So thank you for explaining it in a very simple term and making it quite informal for us, Tilai. It was great to have you here. And thanks all of you for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the nice words. Thanks for the time. And no, I have made it suitable for only Sunday evening, but otherwise, I can make presentations that can be very dry and boring. But I hope this was very light.
Yes, it was.
Definitely, Professor.
Yeah. So if you call me on regular working hours, I just want to warn you, it could be very boring and OHT, as I call in BITS terminology. All right. But gist of what we were trying to do is what I have mentioned here. In a way, it also helped us to sharpen, to rethink for ourselves what we are trying to do. Right. So it's been a great time, and thank you so much. I look
Thanks a
forward
lot.
to
And
meeting
just
you.
shared.
Look forward to meeting you once all this, things settle down a bit. Maybe in any of the real events in the coming year, right? And I think wishing you all a very advanced Happy New Year as well. Right? We're almost ending the year 2020.
Thank you, Tulay. All the best to you too. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Professor. Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye.
And one remark I have to really mention here is the book which Professor Tilley has brought in. So I think probably this should have featured a little ahead in our initial portion. Thodvanam Thedi is a Tamil book specially meant for entrepreneurs, which we have shared in our within groups. And I thought probably I will want to do some acknowledgement here on the book especially meant for entrepreneurs. So, sir, would you again want to add a few words? Because I'm sure it also has a lot of very insightful information meant exclusively for entrepreneurs. The book which you launched recently, almost a fortnight back.
So you want me to talk about it?
Yeah, a few words, sir.
About your book, sir. Recently, you were launched that.
Yes, sir.
So that actually is for a very different audience. Obviously, there are many people who might not have the privilege to attend, a higher education institute and so on. But all of them actually start business for a reason, right? To augment incomes. And starting a business without any formal training, it was felt that it can result in a lot of failures because they make mistakes, and naturally the business environment cannot be very lenient, right? Any mistake business can do to be failure. And so we wanted to do something about these entrepreneurs who run a business, who start a business. So we did a training program for these entrepreneurs. We did a training program for 4 years in a place in Kanchipuram, and we had developed a good material. So what we felt is that material is something that it can be used by many people, not necessarily only those who attended. And the best way we felt, we still belong to the old world, right? We still believe the best way to disseminate anything is through a book, and we felt that let us write a book. And being maybe in also being in academia, we are kind of said that book is the best way to kind of preserve anything for posterity. So we said, let's write a book. So then we wrote a book, and I mean, we did not write a book, we just compiled a book, that chapters written by several authors. Vignesh is included in this group. And then we've kind of published it. And thankfully, because of the importance of the topic, the book has been well received. And so recently we launched the book at IIT Madras in a festival, which Kamal Hassan came and released the book. And this was the first event that happened in Research Park after COVID, I should say. And so it got featured also in Big Boss, which we were surprised. We were surprised that he chose to talk about it in his event. And more importantly, it reached a very, very large audience, because of the way in which it has been disseminated. So that was a bit of luck there. How it, so this book is something that is clearly meant for people at the bottom of the pyramid entrepreneurship, who cannot read English, who do not have access to good reading material, good training material, and all that. So I don't want to kind of say anything more, but we feel that um, our housemaid saw the book and she wanted to read the book, and she felt that the contents were inspiring for her. So that is something that I feel that it really created an impact, and that really we've been able to kind of make an impact at that level. That's what we really intended. So the book is written in Tamil, of course, and um, we did not do any proper writing training in writing Tamil, but I think we just picked it up and then we did it in Tamil. Right? So that's about it.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for sharing the very candid. I'm also super excited to have been involved in the Writing initiative. It's a very, very fulfilling experience to see something tangible, and yeah, and the inputs like what you said completely makes a very big difference there. When people, a common person there is going to read and get inspired from it. So yeah, probably we'll definitely share it more to the wide audience as well. So thanks once again. Thanks to sir in particular for taking your time and making this a very fun and interesting session. Likewise on a Sunday evening, uh, ensuring the participants enjoy it and assimilate it. So thanks a lot once again, sir. It's been a very, very fun and interactive session, and we look forward to have you join us in our upcoming sessions and in our the next big thing, series 5, which probably will happen in 2021. And from our side, we'll want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a festive season, and the new year, a great new year as well.
Okay, thanks. And
Thanks.
all evening. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, sir. Thank you, sir. Great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ignesh.